When Air India Flight 171 crashed shortly after takeoff, the tragedy left a massive void of official information, and almost immediately, television pundits and social media commentators rushed in to fill that silence with a flood of speculation. They proposed everything from the flight crew yanking the wrong levers in a panic to broken cabin televisions triggering a catastrophic structural failure. To actually understand what might have happened, we need to test these rumors against the three pillars of flight: the human procedures in the cockpit, the mechanical systems of the aircraft, and the environmental factors outside. Figuring out an aviation disaster takes methodical patience, not rapid-fire guesswork. When we run these viral theories through basic physical reality, they quickly fall apart. Let's start with the human element. The most popular theory on the news networks right now is that the first officer accidentally brought the landing gear up instead of adjusting the flaps. This animated schematic shows a Boeing center console. Notice the wide physical distance between the flaps and landing gear levers. Reaching the wrong one defies basic muscle memory. In the Yeti Airlines crash, those mistaken controls were right next to each other. Here, they aren't. Another prominent claim is that the pilot simply forgot to deploy the flaps, the extensions on the wings that generate extra lift at lower speeds. For a crew to attempt a flapless takeoff, they would have to completely ignore their mandatory pre-flight checklists, as well as a series of loud, blaring cockpit warnings telling them the plane isn't configured for flight. To accept this specific theory, you have to believe an experienced 8,000-hour pilot bypassed strict ergonomic safeguards, ignored blaring alarms, and skipped mandatory checklists. Then there are the mechanical rumors. Posts on social media pointed to the aircraft's logbook, claiming it had hundreds of logged issues, alongside passenger videos complaining about a broken air conditioning system and faulty in-flight televisions. Every aircraft operates under a minimum equipment list, sorting mechanical issues into two categories: flight-critical mandatory fixes and non-critical deferred items. In-flight entertainment and air conditioning fall squarely into the non-critical bucket, completely isolated from the systems that actually fly the plane. Taking off without satisfying the mandatory flight-critical requirements of that list constitutes gross negligence, a highly improbable scenario for a major, heavily regulated commercial carrier. Even the widely shared detail that the landing gear was down during the incident doesn't explain the disaster. While exposed gear increases aerodynamic resistance, jet engines generate tens of thousands of pounds of thrust, far more than needed to overcome that extra drag. If the engines are providing power, the landing gear being down cannot physically force the plane out of the sky. Trying to draw a direct line between a broken cabin screen or deferred routine maintenance to a sudden total loss of lift ignores the basic engineering principles of commercial aircraft. That leaves the external environment, specifically theories proposing a massive bird strike or a sudden localized weather event known as a microburst. To completely lose thrust from a bird strike, massive flocks would have to be ingested into both engines at the exact same time. An impact of that scale would produce highly visible sparks and severe engine fires. Yet, in all the multi-angle footage captured of the crash, the engines show no visible signs of flame. Looking at this vector comparison, we can see the difference between these events. A microburst forces an aircraft violently and suddenly downward. The telemetry data from Flight 171, however, shows a plane gradually decaying in forward momentum and slowly losing altitude. The physical evidence and the flight data simply don't match the signature characteristics of these environmental hazards. When you apply basic aviation logic and check the physical evidence, the loudest theories amplified by television panels all break down. Social media analysts are drawing conclusions based on the shapes they see in pixelated phone footage, but the flight data recorder has captured the exact position of every control surface and the precise RPM of the engines, providing a digital reconstruction that guesswork cannot replicate. The 24-hour news cycle demands instant answers, but rushing to be first actively distorts the reality of aviation safety. Real investigations require the patience to wait for official, verified reports. Despite sensational headlines, commercial flying remains exceptionally safe. True accountability doesn't come from a television studio. It comes from letting the rigorous, scientific investigative process do its job.